And it's the house of Molenduk?
Molenduk, yeah.
You're in the house of Molenduk.
I'm in the house of Moyaki, actually.
What are these houses? And why are you in one? Guys, I'm not in any house. I'm feeling, I want to be in Chog.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Roll Up. Welcome to a Chain Abstraction Palooza where we just wrapped up an epic one-day marathon in the heart of New York City, diving deep into chain abstraction with some of the top teams in crypto. Trust me, this series is packed with insights, laughs, and a few surprises you won't want to miss. Shout out to Omni Network for helping to put this together with their upcoming mainnet soon, targeting the interoperability and UX problem that we're currently facing in the Ethereum and modular ecosystem. We really enjoyed this series and looking forward to putting all of this content out there. Let's jump right into today's episode after a quick word from some of our awesome partners who make this possible.
Cartesia is your home for app-specific rollups. At the forefront of developing new tools and platforms that enhance the capabilities of blockchain technology, Cartesia enables applications that are flexible and built to scale. Build on a full Linux environment and use traditional software libraries, but in blockchain development. Go to cartesia.io, that's cartesia.io, to learn more about building your own app chain today.
Vertex Edge is now live on Say Network. Say users can now trade 50 plus spot and perp markets with the unified order book liquidity of Vertex Edge across Arbitrum, Blast, Mantle, and Say. The next 6 weeks, 850,000 Say tokens will be up for grabs as trading rewards every single week, exclusively on Say. Join Vertex on Say Network now on Vertex Edge. That's vertexprotocol.com.
All right, New York City here with Keone from Monad. Monad or Monad?
Monad.
Monad, right?
You got it.
And it's the house of Molenduk?
Molenduk, yeah.
You're in the house of Molenduk.
I'm in the house of Moyaki.
Moyaki.
Yeah.
There's only 2 houses in the Monad community, right? Or
There's 3, yeah.
There's 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
What are these houses? And why are you in one? Do the others feel neglected?
You're right. You're right that it would. We did talk about if team members should be in houses or not, but there's a good spread of different people in different houses.
Which one is James in?
I think he's in House of Chog.
Okay,
actually,
cool.
That's the.
I think Tunes tossed me in the house of Molenduk, and ever since I've been in that Telegram chat, it's quite amazing.
Wait, guys, I'm not in any house. I'm feeling, I want to be in Chog. Can you add me in Chog after this? Do I have to do something to get into
I don't
Chog?
think we actually have House of Chog as a Telegram group.
Okay.
That's another thing.
I don't
Is
wanna
that
be
they're
down
a little
then.
overlap. Okay.
All right.
And we can get you added as something.
All right.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, welcome in. Honestly, I think this is a great, I'm sure you get asked a ton about the community, but I feel like this is a really good place to start and then get into some of the more technicals. I'm messing around about these different houses and things, and I saw your post. You were recently in Turkey, I believe, with the stuffed animal of the little Molenduk. How do you feel this little mascot and this kind of memeable culture of such a serious project? How do you feel this has helped you to build your brand, and how has this community organization allowed you guys to really organize socially, pre-product, if you will?
Yeah, I think that the barbell approach is appropriate in a lot of different places in life. So the 70 IQ, 130 IQ, but never be in the middle. So our technology is really building from scratch the entire Ethereum stack. There's a lot of low-level engineering that's gone into that. But equally, or some might even say more important, is the growth of the social layer, and that's come through the formation of the Monad community, which is really just driven by individual members of the community that are really talented, really passionate about crypto's values, really passionate about following along on crypto Twitter, and maybe spent time as not very well known members of the crypto community, just like normal everyday people scrolling, and now are taking on more prominent roles in the Monad community. It's really just about friendship, having fun, creating great art and appreciating great art, creating memes, starting initiatives. We have the Monad Run Club, which was initially just an idea that one community member came up with to motivate themselves to run more. And now, so they set a goal of running 10,000 kilometers and pretty quickly hit that collectively. And now they have a larger goal of, I think, 80,000 kilometers.
Is this distributed, or is this like here in the city? Like, can I?
Anyone can participate. Yeah, nice. I mean, it's on Strava. I believe it's a Strava club.
Okay.
You a big runner?
I'm a mid runner.
Okay.
I ran one marathon once, and I was like, never again.
Oh wow. Okay.
That's cool.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
But yeah.
That's definitely on the right side of the barbell. But yeah, things like that, or Monlingo, which is an effort to learn new languages, because there's so many different really strong regional communities within Monad, and people want to learn languages of other friends in the community. So people are studying Japanese, Korean, Turkish.
Did you all come in, so like, you know, Monad's community has grown so big that it's like a meme in itself at this point. Like, other projects talk about like, what is Monad doing that like we could be doing to grow and stuff. Did you come in with this strategy in mind, or did this develop kind of organically? Like, where did this come from originally?
It was initially the goal, although I have to say that for me personally, I couldn't ever have predicted that the Monad community would be so big so early on. It's really just a testament to individual community members. But when we did open the Discord and start building the community and made our first community-oriented hire, Bill Monday, the idea from the beginning was that we should follow certain mantras, and one that we followed was community is the product. So we need to deliver a great product that is enjoyable, that community members want to take part in, and not feel like they're being farmed, like not feel like they're being asked to do things they don't want to do. I just think that there's a trend in the space of using questing platforms and using certain quote unquote growth hacks, but they really, while they boost numbers, they don't actually build relationships, they don't really build community. So we just took the exact opposite approach and said, let's just create like an environment, a house almost, that is enjoyable to be part in, where people can make friends. It's also very path dependent, because it's also started during the bear market in December 22. So there were a lot of people that were, you know, kind of bummed out about what was going on. And
I feel like that. Yeah, I feel like that's where you were able to like pick up tunes, as like, you know, he was doing a lot of writing and things, and like he was pretty big in the space. And then, you know, those people in the bear kind of wanted to go work on a good project for like kind of like the next cycle or the future. And also, one thing that you said in particular interesting is this idea of in-house. I was having lunch with Anil from Delphi yesterday, and we were chatting about some of like these community strategies. We do a lot of like similar business stuff, and so we're talking about how the strategy which Mana has taken which is kind of internalizing key influencers from various parts of like crypto space or the industry, if you will, and bring them in-house, is likely a strategy that a lot of teams are going to have to adopt to do marketing. And his point was, and I resonated with this, is that if you outsource your marketing as your community and as your project, you almost outsource your voice to these other people. And when you bring it in-house, you have a bit more control of your brand and of kind of this like marketing voice. And so I think that you guys have probably paved the way for more competitive business happenings with regards to influencers and various thought leaders in the space to be internalized on teams. And so just wanted to bring that up as part of the conversation.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it's not just any, I guess, person that has influence, that has a lot of followers, that, you know, can like join a project and immediately start advancing the overall goals of the effort. I think it's, you know, definitely understanding crypto lore and understanding the memes and the culture is definitely a leg up, but yeah, talking about Tunes or Intern or other members of our team that are extremely crypto native or well known, you know, they bring so much to the table that maybe people don't know as well, and that's, you know, that's what's needed in order to build a really successful effort. So yeah, I definitely agree that it's a what do they say, like necessary but not sufficient condition for building out a great community building effort. I guess the other thought, but yeah, I definitely agree with you that building things from scratch rather than outsourcing is the right way to do it. It's hard though, because it requires more resources. It requires a lot of time from the rest of the team. It requires anticipating that ahead of time and getting started early on. So for example, for our team, we started building the Monad community, i.e. open the Discord, in November 2022. Yeah. And that was like 20 months ago now, which is crazy. So it does take a lot of time. You have to start early, and it also can't just be like trying to copy what existing projects have done. Like, it has to be a new playbook that comes from believing what the right thing to do is and then working really hard to make it happen.
Did you have a second thought, or was that the second thought there? Everclear is pioneering the clearing layer. The clearing layer can almost be thought of as splitwise when you go on a trip with friends, but for the blockchain. What I mean by that is when users are sending cross-chain messages, there's oftentimes fillers and solvers who have balances left on different chains that they need to rebalance and reset their positions. This is where Everclear comes in. Everclear is pioneering a collaborative approach to the chain abstraction future, and they are willing to work with interoperability partners, solvers, and other providers in the space to build a interoperable and chain abstraction future. Check out Everclear at everclear.org, and welcome back to the rollup.
Yeah, I think it's just consistent with the way that our community approaches things as well, which is there aren't shortcuts. Like with the technology that the Monad engineering team has been building, it's taken a lot of effort. We built a database from scratch. We built a lot of things from scratch. And I think in the same way, if you want to take a shortcut and use a questing platform so that your tweet gets a lot of likes and a lot of, that's just not.
It's representative of the tech or of the broader idea of the team, et cetera. Right.
Yeah, and it's going to discourage real people from wanting to use it, because they'll be like, well, if there is anything, if there is any opportunity, it's going to be diluted by all of these bots.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's get into some of the tech, shall we?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so we could dive deep into Monad Stack or Monad Stack, or we could talk about chain abstraction and like its relation to that. Where you want to take this?
Let's start with the thesis of the performance. I'd like to kind of just further understand that, and then we'll kind of bring it in the end. So, like the particular pointed question that I have, because I think that we understand the vision. I think the key question that I'm kind of trying to understand is when you guys are going to approach, if you guys are very successful and you guys have a ton of apps, a ton of users, things are going very, very well. I feel like, and I could be completely off on this, I feel like you're going to be faced with the question of, do we centralize our validator set more to scale more as a trade-off? Or of course, we push a lot of the modular stuff do scale with rollups. So do you think that you're going to get to this point and have to be faced with a decision? How are you thinking about scaling, at 10K TPS, how do you think about scaling if you have, hundreds of millions of users? What are you going to do about that future? Or how are you thinking about that scale, in a very successful Monad?
I think of Monad as a project that's building technology to make really computationally dense networks that are fully decentralized. So one Monad is one network with hundreds or thousands of nodes that are globally distributed that can process 1 billion transactions per day. And has a lot of great properties such as censorship resistance, decentralization, and open access so that anyone can run a node very cheaply. These are all properties that are really important to our team. That's the core principle that we've designed the technology for. But your question is if we get to 1 billion transactions per day of usage, then what do we do beyond there? And that's the point where horizontal scaling, i.e. Multiple subnets, if you will, to borrow a terminology from other ecosystems, multiple subnets makes sense, or vertical scaling where there's, using roll-up bridges to have separate environments also powered by Monad, also using Monad's execution that commit transaction data somewhere and commitments, i.e. state roots, to the bottom layer. So there's no, there's no conflict between the idea of making a really performant single unit of blockchain, like making this single environment that's really performant, and the roll up like vertical scaling or subnet like horizontal scaling. It's just for our team, from our team's perspective, we want to make that really dense unit. We want to make it so that also, another thing to mention is we sort of take the principle of max performance, min hardware. So, that means anyone should be able to go get a laptop from Costco and run a node.
Yeah.
Right? And
is the benchmark like the latest MacBook Pro or something?
I think the latest MacBook Pros will be beyond the benchmark, yeah. But the point is, like, we don't want to just throw hardware at the problem. We introduce software improvements, architectural improvements, so that we can get the most out of the hardware.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Did you, this is more of a historical question. Did you ever consider just building it as an L2, or has the vision always been its own independent network?
The vision has always been an independent L1, and there's a couple of reasons for that. The first being decentralization, and maybe second and third being cost and performance, which are really tied to each other. But from a decentralization perspective, we do think that decentralized block production is really important for censorship resistance and trustlessness. We don't want to see one actor just having control over what transactions get sequenced. So that's why there's this whole effort to build this performant consensus mechanism.
Yeah. Do you imagine a world in which the blocks that Monad chain is producing are ever outsourced to builders like what has happened in the Ethereum ecosystem? Or do you imagine that will always stay kind of within the core protocol?
It's hard to predict the future. I think on day one, the block production will be done by the core validators themselves, but we'll see how it evolves over time.
What about in this world that I think that we're trending towards like abstracting away at least the idea of chains, perhaps not every aspect of like the community and the vibes and the certain apps on each chain, but at least it's kind of the kind of goal of today was to get different perspectives about chain abstraction. And like, do you think that because Monad, for example, has such high TPS, really fast execution, do you think that in a world of abstraction, a lot of execution could take place on Monad for just to basically get the best of its use cases instead of doing it on other chains? Or like, how are you kind of viewing Monad's performance within this like execution pathways of abstracted chains, whether L2s, L1s, other ecosystems as well?
Yeah, I think the chain abstraction movement makes sense. It's really about, I think you could interpret chain abstraction in two ways. One is like just having really good onboarding and UX, things like what Privy is doing or what Dynamic is doing. I realize that's not like what most people mean when they say chain abstraction, but just to call it out, like the focus on making it really easy to make a wallet without having to like worry about the passphrase. And then I believe now like these solutions are cross-chain as well, so they can create a wallet for anywhere. And gas, yes.
Those three things, the wallet creation, the gas, and the multi-chain, that's it. That's like the focus now, I think.
I see. Right, so I think that directionally makes a lot of sense because normal people are just not, they're used to using passwords or Gmail. And it should be that technology exists to serve people wherever they are, whether they're the kind of person that like wants to use Gmail login or the person who wants to use a seed phrase and cares about self-sovereignty and being able to go anywhere and still know their seed phrase and have access to their funds. That's one thing. I think the other thing is like the chain abstraction movement that Near and certain other ecosystems have been focused on of having credentials stored on one chain, but then being able to effect actions on other chains through an MPC-based system. And that's super interesting as well. I'm excited about it. I think from the perspective of Monad, we're building core technology that makes the EVM really performant. So from an execution perspective, building this database that offers really high performance parallel state access. And then from the actual execution of transactions perspective, parallel execution, optimistically executing many transactions to unlock more power in the CPU. And I think I can see that there could be people who have their account balances or their credentials and so on generally on another chain, but then through the chain abstraction movement could be, relaying instructions, signatures to Monad to really cheaply, much more cheaply interact with certain apps on Monad than they would in their home environment.
Cartesia is your home for app-specific rollups. At the forefront of developing new tools and platforms that enhance the capabilities of blockchain technology, Cartesia enables applications that are flexible and built to scale. Build on a full Linux environment and use traditional software libraries, but in blockchain development. Go to cartesia.io, that's cartesia.io, to learn more about building your own app chain today.
Yeah, I think that's like generally how the broader UX gets better. I think I put out a tweet like when will we have an app that you can aggregate all the liquidity from all these chains, or when will we have something where you can kind of use all of what is. And so I think that's like kind of getting there in a separate way with like execution, but kind of getting us closer. On a different note, you recently were on Bankless doing a debate about Mega ETH, or conversation with Lei from Mega ETH. I'm just curious on your perspective on kind of like how that went, what your thoughts are on highly performant L2s in comparison to kind of these highly performant L1s, and generally like the trade-off landscape that you see there.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a couple of big differences between Monad and between the sort of category of high performance L2s that's starting to develop.
Yeah.
Putting the community aspect aside, which I think is actually a really big part as well, because for builders that are deciding where to build, knowing that there's an incredibly passionate community with a ton of lore and a really strong social layer that's going to be behind you as the builder, that's a very powerful motivator as well. And I just like mention that, but then put it to the side. At the end of the day, Monad is really focused on getting the most performance out of minimal hardware. And we think that's important because although in Monad mainnet, we expect a couple hundred validators participating directly in consensus, meaning that they're proposing blocks and voting on blocks directly. So a couple hundred nodes. In addition to that, anyone should be able to run a full node. So anyone should be able to run a node that listens to all this traffic and maintains the full state, executes all the transactions, and trustlessly verifies what's going on and knows exactly the state of the world. And that could be anyone from a trading firm to a storekeeper to a bank to an exchange. Like any of these entities need to be able to run full nodes. And if it's really expensive to run that node, if it's thousands of dollars a month, like tens of thousands of dollars per year to run that node, because it's the beefiest box that you can get in AWS. Like that's just not going to be sustainable. That person's not going to want to use that technology. So then they have to trust someone.
Right. But then you get,
and the whole point is we're trying to avoid trust.
To avoid that, right? And but you get more TPS than on like a distributed validator set chain by centralizing like a sequencer on an L2. If you beef up the hardware hard. But you're saying like
I think
the censorship resistance properties are just not worth the trade-off.
Censorship resistance is a big part of the reason why we're all here, why we're all building what we're building.
Yeah, it's an existential problem in Ethereum now.
Yeah, I would say if it's not decentralized, what's the point? And with that said, I know that different rollup projects have a roadmap of how to decentralize the validator, and are working toward that, which is exciting. But if the core premise is that one node is going to be so beefy that it can just like keep everything in memory and like do a whole bunch of work, relying on hardware, then when you go to decentralize, now all of those nodes have to have that property as well. And it's just not sustainable. So yeah, I think that generally the roll-up ecosystem has kind of followed the mantra of like reasonable hardware requirements and work on software to make it so that the validator set can get decentralized. And I think that's kind of a prudent, measured approach. Like build the technology and then like, then over time, like raise the performance rather than just relying on hardware from the start.
Yeah. I think one thing that Solana has done and that what Monad's going to do to Ethereum is like pushing the level of the competitive nature at the L1 that needs to compete with these basically upcoming projects that have kind of, your benefit of building Monad now the last couple of years is that Ethereum was built before. You're able to kind of take what you want, take the best parts and make your version of it, and similar for these other L1s. And so I feel like the benefit of building Monad now is that you guys have been able to build off of what has been built already, EVM and other iterations of L1s and roll-ups. Now there's been chatter about Ethereum not being able to compete with certain, or scale right because of this like slow block times at the L1. Do you think Ethereum L1 is going to have base layer changes, or what do you think is the state of kind of like scaling the Ethereum base layer to improve the roll-up centric kind of vision?
Right. It's actually a really good segue, I guess, because with Monad, our team is building software so that the hardware requirements don't have to change. So you can get more performance if you make architectural improvements, and that can allow the L1 to scale without changing the requirements of the number of nodes that are participating in consensus. And so that's the first comment that I have, is that fundamentally you want to, like, it's like you have a remote control and then there's, the batteries that go in the remote control. If I could give you a better battery that just can be 10x more or 20x or whatever, more dense in terms of power, you can literally just like use that remote control much longer without changing the device at all. Sorry, it's a silly analogy because it just popped into my head, but yeah, that's the point, is like just get more out of the same requirements. That said, there's also improvements that are being discussed to Ethereum that would maybe change the number of nodes that are participating in consensus. Currently, there's about 1 million quote-unquote validators, although most of them are virtual validators. Like, there's about 10,000 nodes representing those 1 million validators. So cutting the number of validators down from 1 million to 10,000 would obviously drastically reduce the overall overhead of this consensus, and aggregating 1 million BLS signatures is not fun. So those are changes that can happen kind of without a lot of some operational change, but like probably not a significant change to decentralization at all.
Are you shooting for that scale of like 10,000, or is it more in the like hundreds?
Yes, Monad is shooting for that in the longer term, although on day one mainnet, definitely not 10,000, more like a couple hundred.
What block times do you expect with, I guess, do you expect block times to change as you scale that as well?
That's a good question. We don't expect them to change just due to the nature of the consensus mechanism. It's linear communication, so it scales quite well as the number of nodes grows compared to a quadratic system like Tendermint, or now Comet BFT. But yes, I think it's interesting because Monad will be pushing to add more and more validators participating over time, and at the same time, I personally believe, and everyone has their own belief, but I believe that Ethereum over time will like come down in the number of individual validators for efficiency, and maybe there could even be convergence at some point, which I think would be super exciting.
Yeah, that's interesting.
There definitely seems to be a lot of like research momentum of just like, let's cut solo stakers, like just is what it is, like let's reduce the like size of the network at this point in the Ethereum community. Whether that's the best path or not, that's kind of an open question that we could have a long conversation about that, but yeah.
I think we're good. Thank you, Keone.
Yeah, thanks for coming through, man.
Thank you.